Session. Welcome everybody to the soft launch of the online International Astrological Library. Thank you so much for coming, and I've got a feeling that there'll be a lot more people coming as we go along because lots of people have shown interest. I just want a couple of practical things, because we have actually had 108 people have said they would be interested in coming, and some of them are here for a short while and some of them are here for a long while, and some will have to come in later and so on. We have organised it so that everybody stays mute without their camera on for most of the time, but if you want to ask a question or do anything, to participate, make suggestions and things like that, just type up a quick sentence in the chat box. I'll be watching the chat box all the time, and so will Mary and the others. And we will try and bring you into the conversation as quickly as possible. I don't think anything. Yes, don't use the chat box for general conversation. You can, of course, you can send a message to individuals in the chat box, but not to everybody, because if it's just a general comment, if it's a request to talk, then please make it a general to everybody message. Thank you. Well, except for that, all I want to do really is introduce the library subgroup. At the moment, Mary, you are on my screen. I don't know what you've done to do that, but Mary, if you say hello.
Hello.
Yeah, Mary English is a board member, very enthusiastic to the library and all things connected with the library. Amanda Williams, Amanda, you say hello. So we see Amanda is our AA board secretary and also working very well with the library group. Chris Mitchell, I think a lot of you will know him over the years. Chris is under Astrological Association and doing a lot of the backup work here. Say, Chris, hello. Yeah.
Hello,
come on, say something.
And I will change my name from Astrological Association as well.
Yeah, okay. You're not, yeah. And where are we now? And of course, Philip Graves, who I'm going to pass over to in a moment. Philip's a librarian. I think you know his tremendous expertise from his regular Facebook pages and the articles he writes in the journal, and the fact that he has gathered together tens of thousands of astrology books in one place, and not only gathered them together, but gathered in his mind a lot of knowledge of these books. And it's Philip who's scanned all the books that are in the library at the moment and will be scanning more books going forward. So I'm going to pass over to him so he can introduce you to the library and obviously answer your questions as we go through. But I know he's got a set amount of information to give you to start with. So over to you, Philip. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Roy, and thank you everybody for coming to listen and participate in this evening's preliminary session on the International Astrology Library Online. And what I would like to do first of all is to go through a little bit of background to this project. You're probably aware that several years ago, Roy already solicited a number of volunteers to scan a complete set of the Astrological Association's own publications, which are available for browsing to current members. And this is really just taking that initiative further by starting to go through the out of copyright material, not only in the Astrological Association library, but also in my separately developed private library, which now shares space with the AA's library, and pick out as much as possible of the good quality out of copyright source material to add to this resource. Now, can somebody please remind me how I share my screen, because I want to actually demonstrate the system here.
Yeah, down at the bottom it should say share, and then it will come up and you can either share an entire screen or you can share a window.
Got it. Thanks. Thank you, Chris. I can see now what happened. I made the window just a little bit too narrow, so the share button had disappeared, but it's there now. So I will go to the active application window and click share. Now, that should be showing the AA bookcase. How this works, the system, Once books are, first of all, scanned and cropped as PDFs, they're then converted to what's called a flippable book through one of the various systems that does this, which is the form in which you will see these books online. And usually it starts with the front cover, and then pages are artificially connected together as a kind of virtual double page spread. And you can also organize them into virtual bookcases by theme. And that's exactly what we've been doing so far. So we've got one bookcase so far, which is dedicated to books from the Astrological Association library that have been newly scanned and converted this year. There are currently 72 books in this bookcase, of which 70 are out of copyright sources, and I will come to the other two at the end of this presentation. And you can see that on the screen, all their names are shown in alphabetical order or in order of how recent they were first uploaded, and that is user sortable. So currently, if I go here, that changes the sort order to name. You can also sort by date of upload, and then you'll get the most recent ones first. So I'll do it for names. So you can see we start with Adams, and we go to Aldridge, Ananth, Anonymous, Bajent, Campion, Harvey, which is the special project we'll come to at the end, Bailey, Carter, and so on. And it's very logical from there because it's all alphabetically sorted. And go to any one of these books, and if you click on it, you'll go inside. So let's go to the textbook of scientific astrology by Dr. Rao from 1936, which is one of quite a few fine old Indian astrology books that are in the AA library. So once we're inside, I think it's possible to go full screen in some way. Yes, here, if I go here, we'll see a better view now. Generally speaking, for best quality, you should try to enable the full screen view, which is toggleable from this little button down here. And then it's simply a matter of navigating, and you can either use the bar at the bottom to directly jump to a page, which will then load up, or you can flip by dragging pages left and right between pages, so you can read it as a virtual book that way. There's also the possibility of zooming in if you want to see something in more detail. So let's find an example of a nice diagram. Well, it's not a particularly good one, but we might find one with a little bit more detail somewhere. Okay, let's take this diagram here. If you wanted a close-up view of that, you go to the little plus button down at the bottom. And if I can actually click on that somehow, fortunately this is being difficult because I've got an annotate button over the top. But yes, it is possible to zoom in with the plus button, and then you will get the highest resolution possible and be able to, you can still read in exactly the same way, but you can actually drag the page with you, and then you can read it in a larger size and continue that way. And then I think you have to zoom out again to flip the next page, but you can do that any way you want. I do take optical resolution for scanning very seriously, and this comes from my quite a lot of years of experience scanning old books. So I use settings that optimize for image quality, and that makes these, I think you'll find, much higher resolution scans than some of the monochrome scans that do the rounds of internet archives and similar locations. Let's get out of this one for now. If I come out of full screen, and I will close that book down. Now, there are lots of other books here in the A bookcases you can see, but I'm going to show you some of the other bookcases as well. So we start with the earliest in time, and the other bookcases that we have currently all comprise books that I scanned previously for other projects, which I'm now loaning free of charge to the AA's project. So we start with From Lily to Partridge, English Renaissance Astrology Text, 1598 to 1726. And that was originally one of my DVD projects with 27 books. I think it's possible there are one or two more since then.
Philip, can I just mention to everyone that, of course, you saw Philip going through the operating software that he's using to create this library. When we get it set up for your use, you won't need to do that. You'll just be jumping between visual things that you're looking at now. Is that right, Philip?
It is. There will be
Yeah.
some kind of system set up on the AA website that will give direct links to the different bookcases, which will be a more user-friendly interface than the administrative one I just used. And so then you can come to any of these books. Again, I've sorted them by name for the demonstration. So you've got Richard Ball there with Astrology Improved, John Bishop and Richard Kirby with the Marrow of Astrology, and so on. And I got a request to demonstrate William Lilly's Christian Astrology. So we click here and we go to View. That opens up. So as you can see from the copyright notice at the bottom, this is one of the many books that I previously scanned for a private project just over 10 years ago, and it's now available to the AA's users of this project. So let's flip through a few pages, and you can see this was my original first edition of Lilly's Christian Astrology, which has some fun little annotations at the front. It might again be a fun thing to expand this screen a little bit so you can see the chart there, the manuscript chart exactly as it looks if you see the physical book, but you don't actually have to visit the library anymore to see it because you can just see it here. And let's zoom out again. Excuse me. It lets me zoom out. Yes, that's better. Right, and then we got the frontispiece of Lily. One little quirk of the Flip HTML system is that it decides for you how it's going to combine the pages, and occasionally it gets it the wrong way around. So in this instance, it's put what should be the frontispiece portrait of Lily on the left, on the right, and it's put the title page on the left. But it doesn't really matter in practice because you still get all the content. It's just the wrong way around, left to right. So that's another example of one of the books in this bookcase. Let's go out of there again. I come out of full screen again. Close this one down, and let's go into one of the other bookcases. The next one after that in time is From Sibley to Simonite. And it's going to press me for a password every time I do this, but that should be such an issue when the system is fully live. So this was a DVD project that I created in 2013 to 2014, which comprises about 42 books published between 1784 and 1854. I'm going to sort them by name so you can see in alphabetical order. A lot of the books in this bookcase have been discussed in the series of articles that's been run in the journal for on and off for the last couple of years, From Sibley to Zadkiel. So you will be able to see all the same, more or less all the same source material I refer to in those articles in the original form in this bookcase. There are a few from that series that go beyond 1854, and they'll be in the next bookcase. So, for instance, you've got a lot by Simonite, W.J. Simonite, who was a leading mid-19th century author, and we haven't actually come to him in the series of articles yet. He will be the subject of one of the last major parts in due course. And we've also got works by Zadkiel at the end here, who is the subject of the current part of that series. Okay, let's go to the next bookcase, which is From Cook to Pierce. English and American Sources on Astrology, 1854 to 1894. That was another DVD project which immediately follows on in time from the previous one. And in the alphabetical order, it starts with Brufton's monthly Planet Reader and Astrological Journal. And we'll take a quick look at that because it's a very famous work. Although it's actually a journal, it's particularly beloved of American astrologers who take an interest in American history because Luke Brufton, who was a British emigre to Philadelphia originally and later moved to New York, was famed for his predictions during the American Civil War in the 1860s, and particularly predictions relating to presidents. And if you've ever come across people who are real enthusiasts for mundane astrology and are American astrologers, they will almost certainly have heard of this journal and of Brufton's predictions. So this was a set of the complete run of all 43 issues published that I purchased from an eBay seller about 17 years ago, and subsequently with some difficulty because of the very tight margins scanned for this particular DVD. So let's just see if we can go and find some of the diagrams in this one a little further on. Okay, that's a characteristically florid sort of illustrated chart from this journal where you've got an American politician whose chart is given and he's in the center and you've got this kind of oval chart around him. So that's just an example of some of the fun historical content you get in this journal. Let's go out of that one again and we will move on to the next bookcase after this one. Just quick look through to the end there briefly. And we'll go to the next bookcase, which is the first of the Alan Leo trilogy. And that's called Godfather of Modernity. The Alan Leo Legacy, Volume 1, Early Astrological Journals, 1890 to 1912. And what this is actually a complete scan of everything Alan Leo edited between 1890 and 1912. And actually, this is even better than the DVD now. The original DVD lacked 2 issues of the Astrologer's Annual, which some will know that for 4 months of its total run, Modern Astrology magazine did not have a regular issue, and instead it had something called the Astrologer's Annual, which almost never appears in the bound sets of the relevant years. And that's for 1906 and 1909, and they're very, very hard to find. Eventually, I did, during the start of the pandemic, track down the 2 missing issues of that, thanks to a gentleman in London who had found them in an attic of the house he had moved into decades ago, and he sold them to me together with quite a lot of other original issues, which were duplicates to the bound sets, but with the added covers and advertising matter. So that's a lot of fun. I haven't scanned all those other copies as well because essentially the content of the magazines is the same, although the added advertising has its own interest. But anyway, this is now complete up to 1912. Let's just take a quick look at one of those. Look at the Astrologer's Annual for 1908. So they've got the original cover. And if you look through the original advertising at the front of that one as well, and you can read this just as somebody would have done in December 1907, except without the physical book in front of you. Let's go out to that one and we'll go to the next bookcase. The next bookcase is the immediate successor to that one, which is the Alan Leo Legacy Volume 2, and that's called Itinerant to Eternity, which was an allusion to Alan Leo's increasingly spiritual aspirations. This spans 1913 to 1941. towards the end, it doesn't have all the issues. The very last issues of Modern Astrology magazine are extremely scarce. I think circulation was in free fall around the start of Second World War, so those ones are very hard to find. But we've got almost all of them. And Alan Lear lived to around 1916, 1917, whereupon Bessie Lear took over the publication until her death, and she had some help for quite a few of those years from, first of all, from Major A.G. Adam, and then from Vivian Robson. And after she died, it was taken over by Maurice Weems, also his real name is Duncan Macnaughton, well-known Scottish theosophical astrologer, famous for his book The Wheel of Life. And then finally there was somebody called, I think, David Friedman, who took it over around the start of the war. But it was mostly Alan and Bessie Leo who were responsible for this publication. So again, this is a very comprehensive research resource, except for the last few issues which are missing. Let's go out of there and we will go. Sorry. Okay, I'll just go directly from the previous page. So that was the last of the 5 DVDs actually published when I was based out in Sweden. And then this would have been the 6th, but it was delayed to the point that I had to leave Sweden before it could be published, but I had done most of the work. So this is now what would have been the 6th DVD in virtual form, which is Esoteric Fraternity, the Alan Lear Legacy Volume 3, books by Alan Lear and others published by Modern Astrology Office and the Theosophical Publishing House in the early 20th century. So they were very much not Alan Lear himself in isolation, but his entire circle of people whose work he published and people whose work was sympathetic to his theosophical approach, even if he didn't publish it. Some of them were published, as I say, by the Theosophical Publishing House. Again, this is a pretty comprehensive resource. I've collected nearly all of Alan Lear's books and booklets in time. And you've got some pretty rare ones in here, such as this one, 4 lectures on astrology, exoteric and esoteric from 1901. And that was actually published in India, which is why it's so scarce. But there's a French translation, which is actually more common than the English original, but it's very important historically for the insight it gives into where Alan Lear got his ideas from at that time. And I do refer to this book quite a bit in one of my essays on sun sign astrology in my recently published volume of collected essays, which is called Technical and Planetary Developments in Astrology. Let's go out of that one. And most of these are the first edition. So you can see, for instance, this one, which is on horary astrology, has a distinctive coloured cover that all the first editions up to about 1910 of Alan Lear's manuals series had, before they were standardized into a kind of racing green for the reprints from 1911 onwards. And the good thing about having the first edition is you can see how the work was exactly when it was first published. And I always feel like it gives a more authentic view of the author's intention than any later reprint does. So that was Lear's work on horary in 1907. Now, I don't want to spend too long on Alan Lear, so let's get on to the next of the bookcases. And this is the turn of the century UK, late Victorian and Edwardian astrology, 1894 to 1915. This was a prototype for what would have been another DVD, which was never published, and it could still be extended. The material that is here is not comprehensive as a coverage of British astrological publications during these 22 years. There are more. There are certainly more in my private library, which could be scanned and added to this with the right support in the future. But there are lots of very important works here. Let's take a look at this one, for instance. This is Raphael's Private Lessons in Astrology, 1885, which is one of the works by one of the two prolific English astrologers who used the pseudonym Raphael. The first was Robert Cross Smith, who was active between the 1820s and his death in the early 1830s. But the second was Robert T. Cross. He was sometimes known as Robert Thomas Cross, but more recent research suggests that Thomas wasn't actually his real middle name, so that's been thrown out of the window. But he wrote quite a few important books between the 1870s and 1910s, including ultimately Raphael's Mundane Astrology and Raphael's Medical Astrology, and also this oddity, which was his Private Instructions in Genethliacal Astrology, published as a manuscript and then duplicated like this. And this went through multiple editions itself. This is a very early edition of 1885. There's also a later edition from 1903, which is a little bit more common, and there are numerous later reprints. But again, you can see a very, very early version of this as it was originally published when Robert Cross was still at a relatively young stage of his career. Let's go out of that one, see through to the end. We've also got journals in this bookcase, such as Coming Events, 3 whole years of Coming Events, which was partly edited by Safariel. And this is, again, this is actually much more scarce than Modern Astrology magazine. It's exceedingly scarce, but they do occasionally, very occasionally, surface for sale, and I've managed to collect about 3.5 years worth. So you get a lot of vintage material from the latter part of the 1890s here, with Safariel in the chair as editor for most of it. Okay, I think we've seen enough of this bookcase for now, so let's go out of that one and back to the menu. We've got one more mini bookcase here, and we will take questions in a moment. I'm just going to very briefly demonstrate this one and come back to the A bookcase as well. So this one I've called Rare Racing Astrology and Financial Astrology Books. How this has come about is that over the course of the last 10 years or so, just occasionally I've got special requests for scans of rare books on financial astrology and racing astrology, and I've got several originals of this which are in a lot of demand. So I thought it would be fun to make these available as part of the resource too. So for instance, we have here the Astrology of the Race Course by R.L. Sutaria, an Indian author, I believe. There was a reprint of this by Speaker Publications in Australia about 15 years ago, but it's very, very hard to find that one now. And I found this original for sale at quite a high cost from a London bookseller about 5 years ago, and I thought, well, it would be worth having. So I've scanned it, and you can read, again, quite a close approximation in terms of the picture quality to how the original book looks here.
Would you like to expand it a bit, that list of contents, perhaps?
Yeah, certainly. Let's go back to
Yeah.
this one. Okay, let's expand the table of contents on Sutaria's book.
Yeah.
So we've got the business of race and language of the stars, the horoscope, what does planets stand for, planetary colours, winners while you wait, and so on. You can see the rest, I think. It's about 250 pages. This actually was the second edition. I haven't seen an original of the first for sale, and even this one comes up for sale extremely rarely. So it's a fun thing to have for research purposes, for particularly for people who take an interest in the history of kind of speculating and its links to
So you
astrology.
want one of those paragraphs, one of those chapters. I mean, what do we go to page 64 or something and see what winners while you wait? Is that 82? I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's 82. Let's have a look at that. Okay, let's jump to 67 because I was looking at 82 in the actual
Yeah.
number of pages. That's better. Okay.
Here we go.
So can you all see that all right?
Yeah, make it a bit bigger. See, it's just interesting to, because I mean, when people, you've just given us loads and loads of insights into this amazing range of traditional books. When we go and start using the library, we're going to be looking at them in much more depth. You know, we'll be
Yeah.
doing what I'm doing now. So, in chapter, I told you the numbers ruled by the planets, 18 numbers of planets. But was mostly. Oh, he's nice. This is revealed how to win money at the races all those years ago.
It was one of a number of theories, and he wasn't the only or the earliest writer on this topic. One or two of the other sources are actually slightly earlier than this, but it was a popular theme, partly probably because of the popularity of racing in the early 20th century.
It's amazing how much old stuff is this stuff that I just didn't know about. I don't know if how many people watching now did. You know, it's just amazing, this collection. I think
Let's
it's
go
so
to
interesting.
one more slightly earlier one. And this was also, I think, an Indian author who used the pseudonym Ariel. You can see 10 rupees that cost. I think that would be old Indian rupees, which sounds ridiculously small amount. But
He's quite using Shakespeare to justify it.
so there we've got the full table of contents. And one interesting thing here, he uses these terms, the golden key and the silver key, which Zafariel was also using in some of his publications. Zafariel had a book called Silver Key, which was also on the subject of the racing application of astrology, and that was published slightly earlier than this, just a few years earlier. So I think it's an example of the interactivity of the international astrological community, even in the 1910s. That Zafariel from the UK was influencing an Indian astrologer into using this kind of language, even though he was doing independent research.
What is that article in the left-hand side there? Can you make that a bit bigger? What's that all about?
Sure, that
Don't seem
says
to be anything to do with horse racing, but maybe it is.
no. I mean, occasionally you get these inserts where a previous owner has just stuck a thing in like a scrapbook almost because it was of interest to them, a press clipping. So what's that say? Might say Tunis 5634. I don't know if that was an article that was published in a newspaper in Tunis, in Tunisia. I have no idea, but it says prehistoric
I think it
implements in
says
London.
Times.
Ah, Times, yes, well spotted.
This is very obviously related to
That's a bit of
this is
archaeological history.
the claim that long ago, it's 150,000 BC, the craftsmen who worked tools of ingenious rock comparable to the flint instruments from other localities were versed in mathematics and astronomy. This is interesting. I wonder if Nick Campion's seen this before he wrote The History of Western Astrology.
Well, I imagine the Glasgow Archaeological Society will have an archive somewhere, even if it doesn't exist anymore. And somebody who wanted to research the source of this article could probably do so if they had the will. Okay, shall we come out of there now?
Yeah, go on. Say again, what did you say, Philip?
I just said, shall we come out of this one now?
Yeah, please, yeah.
Okay.
Carry on. I just wanted to
Oh, that's
show
fine.
people
Okay.
how much you can go into what they use the library for. Yeah.
A very quick look at this one, which again has been a source of much discussion in recent years. And this is called The Infallible Guide to Future Events by A. Garfield Harrison.
Who was he?
And he was an American lawyer, and he came over to northern England where he settled, and he worked as an astrologer with a particular interest. There he is, Garfield Harrison. He was also probably one of the earliest Black astrologers who had a book published in the UK. So he's been of considerable interest to some of my American astrologer friends on that account since I first demonstrated this book in an OPA presentation a few years ago on the diverse range of approaches to astrology in the 20th century. And that's the first edition from 1928. Now, if you can see here, this book was priced at, I'll put it up to full screen again if I can. Oh, I'm already in full screen, sorry. At £100 in 1928, which was an outlandish sum in those days. And I think the review in Modern Astrology magazine makes a comment about this as well, but I think it was reviewed by Vivian Robson, and Vivian Robson actually gave it a favourable review, even though he was a bit aghast at the price. But the idea, I suppose, was to make the methods of racing prediction in this book exclusive. See the table of contents there? Not surprisingly, not many copies of this book survive. And if you find one at all, either it will be in terrible condition or it will cost thousands of pounds, or somewhere in between the two if you're lucky. Well, I won't labour this one for too long, but it's partly philosophy, actually, partly practical tips. Let's get out of that.
Do you think you could win a horse race on the basis of what he's telling you, Philip, from what you've seen there?
Well, Roy, first of all, I'm not a gambler, so I have never bet on anything. So
No.
to me, the interest is purely theoretical in the astrological theory and the history.
Yeah.
I know there are
I
people
know.
who do apply this to actual speculation. Obviously, it's not something I would ever endorse because I just don't believe in gambling, but you know, each to their own. So let's get out of this one. And let's go back finally to the AA bookcase. And we'll come to this project I mentioned at the beginning. So this is the first edition of Mundane Astrology, an introduction to the astrology of nations and groups by Michael Bagent, Nick Campion, and Charles Harvey from 1984. And I recently received authorization and a request from Nick to scan this, and he has the permission of the widows of his co-authors and include it in this project, as well as the second edition. In fact, his original request was for the second edition, but I pointed out that the book's particularly famous for its mundane predictions relating to the late 1980s and early 1990s and the momentous changes in Eastern Europe that took place at that time. And therefore, I thought personally it would be a very good idea to have the first edition too, so people can actually see that these predictions were made several years in advance and were not just bolted on to the second edition of 1992 after the event, which obviously would not then be an authentic prediction. But both of these volumes are very hard to find at sensible prices second-hand nowadays. You sort of pay upwards of £150 for one in sound condition. And that's part of the reason why I think Nick and Susie Harvey, and I don't know her name, but Michael Bagent's widow, all felt it would be a good time to make the book more widely available again. So this is what
I
we've
had a
done.
little bit of background to this, Philip, because I've been encouraging Nick with several other people to try to update this book and republish it. And we did have it organised to be republished, but Nick kept on hesitating about doing this. And we even had a way of updating the chart styles and everything. And basically, he said to me recently, look, he said, this is a book of its time. I don't want to change anything that anybody wrote at that time, although things have developed. And if I was writing the book now, it would be looking a bit different. I mean, this book really established, with Carter's earlier work and some of the stuff happening in America, it established mundane astrology. And therefore, it's a very, very important book. But at the same time, it was written in the 1980s. And a lot's happened not only in the world, but also in mundane astrology since then. So just recently, just as we were getting this project underway, Nick said, look, I think we ought to just make the book available online as it is. And I'm going to check up with the copyright holders to see if that's possible. And it was obvious that this should be made available on this library, on the library that we're establishing. So it means that rather than searching around for an expensive hard copy, you can actually, once we open the library, actually access exactly what everybody said when they said it 40 or 45 years ago. And I think this is really exciting. And I hope it's the first of many examples of where, although Philip's shown you this amazing collection of older volumes that I knew very little about, and it's just amazing to have them there and to be able to access them, look at them and study them in detail. To also have more up-to-date books allowed in the library by people who hold copyright but would like them to be widely available online. We do the best I can as we can to develop the library to make that possible. And here's a wonderful example of what could be possible. Thank you, Philip. I just wanted to add that in.
Thank you very much for that context, Roy. That's very helpful. And just to show you the second edition briefly, it's almost exactly the same, except this is actually a third impression of the second edition from 1995, but exactly the same in text as the 1992 edition. It's almost the same, but very slightly longer. It goes to just over 515 pages, whereas the first edition was around 500. And the main edition, I think, is one of the appendices that was added between, or perhaps it was an additional chapter, I can't remember offhand, but there is a difference anyway. There is some additional content. So it's great to have both editions now and for members to be able to compare them, I think, if they are interested in studying from this very scholarly book, which was extremely well researched. I think if you look at the bibliography at the back, it's one of the most detailed ones for an astrological publication of its time. We very often find, I think the bibliography maybe before that, or maybe it's after. Well, there's even here, there's just a list of journals that were consulted in preparing this, and it's an international list. You've got Les Cahiers Astrologiques from France, for instance, and Astrologie heute from Germany. Actually from Switzerland, it says here, but it's German language in any case. And we even got a Spanish Annuario Astrologico or something like that. Astrologico. So it's and Sein und Werden, which is another German language source. So the authors who worked on this book treated it a bit as Nick has treated his more recent projects, with academic rigor. So for its time, it was outstanding. Just wanted to mention that. And that's probably why it continues to be on reading lists for a lot of the major astrology schools today, and why it's permanently at such a high price, because the demand always outstrips the supply by several times. So I think that is enough for my initial presentation. So I will go back to the panel and ask if anybody has any questions as well.
Well, this is the chance for a few people, everybody to have questions. I mean, literally, I have nothing in the chat box. And I think what's happened is people have been so captured by what you're telling them and one new thing after another that they just want to hear more. But has anybody in the subgroup got any questions or comments to make? And if any of you want to come in, just drop a note of your name and that in the chat box, and we'll unmute you and let you say something.
So we're going to have this online that members can access, and we're doing it that we have membership access, and also if people want to access, then they can pay a fee to that. So members will get it at a different price, etc. So we've got a question in the chat. Where's that gone?
Just Kay Jones saying how pleased she is and looking forward to reading the books. I don't know. This is interesting. Are there any areas of astrology that you might want to know about? Yes, okay. John Green. Would you like to unmute John, Mary? Can you find
I
him
will.
And John is saying, what resolution are the scans in?
Oh, super resolution.
Yeah. So obviously you might like to say something about that, Philip, and maybe John will have other points to make, one which he can talk to you.
Okay, I can answer both those questions. First of all, the scans were originally taken in a mixture of 300 and 400 dots per inch. For some of the early DVD projects, I did use 300 dots per inch. I then upgraded it to 400 thereafter, but they were all scanned with lossless compression, which is why you don't see the kind of artifacts of characters being artificially broken up into darker and paler areas that you often get with scans. They were then converted to the flipbook format, which I don't know exactly what compression settings they use, but I set it to the highest available conversion setting for quality purposes.
Super.
And to answer the other question that came up was about Count Rantzau. Now, so far, I do have, there aren't so many in the AA's library, but I do have in my private collection originals from the late 16th century of 2 volumes by Heinrich Rantzau in the original Latin. And if there is sufficient support and this project progresses, we may get to a stage where there is support for scans even of Latin sources.
Oh, that'd be good, yeah.
Would add significantly to the depth of historical material available. So those could be done.
Yeah. We got a question from Georgia Statis. She says, "This is wonderful, Philip. I'm the chair of the Alexandria Base org project, and I think we're cataloguing your collection." She wants to say thank you and that it's excellent. Alison, do you want to, shall I unmute you and then you can actually ask your question and make it a bit more friendly? Hold on, let me unmute yourself.
Yeah, it's telling us to unmute you rather than we can do it. I don't know why that is, but
I can ask her to unmute and should hopefully be able to. There we go. Okay, Alison, hit us with your question.
I think this is wonderful. I'm just wondering, if you want to access a book, if someone's already looking at that book, will you then have to wait until that someone is finished with the book?
Thank you for your question, Alison. As far as I know, there should be no such issue because, with the exception of the Bajent Campion Harvey volumes, for which we have the permission of the copyright holders, as far as possible, we are prioritizing and trying to focus exclusively on material that won't be an issue in terms of copyright. So we are not bound by a rule that we have to loan only one copy at a time. And as far as I'm aware, the infrastructure that's hosted by Flip HTML will allow for multiple users to access the same file at the same time. There will simply be a call request to load that into screen memory, and there's no technical reason I can think of, given my limited knowledge of how servers work, why that shouldn't be possible.
The way that Stellarium works, which is the free magazine associated with the Astrological Journal that was launched a couple of years ago, that encourages as many people as possible to access it. I'm sure there's more than one person accessing that all the time. And this is the same basic system. So I can't believe it won't, but we'll give it a test. We will know for sure. We will actually give it a test after this when we do our post-mortem and to make sure, but I'm absolutely sure it will do.
Super. Georgia wants to ask her question. I've got to find you on the list of people so I can unmute you. Where are you?
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
I can
you've
hear you.
done
There
it.
you go.
Yes.
Okay, you've done it.
Hello,
Well done.
Georgia.
Yeah.
Just unmuted.
Hello.
Yeah, Philip, I wanted to ask you, and I apologize, I was late. I could not get in. That's why I was a little late. So maybe you answered this. Is there a certain amount of time somebody can borrow the book to read it? Do you have that?
As far as I'm aware, there's no limit to that. It doesn't really work in the same way that
Okay.
borrowing books does from conventional libraries, because the scans are hosted online all the time, and it's not a case of you having to download the whole book.
No.
You simply would be doing just as I was there, of accessing the book and loading one page at a time into screen memory, without saving the whole book to your computer. That's how it works. So there really should be no limit of that kind that I'm aware of. And I think we are on a paid plan which has no restrictions.
Okay.
Yeah, I've just got a message here from Wendy. Wendy, I don't know if you want to if you want to unmute and say it yourself, but she says that she is the originator of the Stella magazine that I was mentioning earlier, and she says multiple copies can be viewed at one time. And as I say, we will check all that, but I'm actually sure you can. I got Joe. Was anybody we've left out in the rush? There was a sudden rush of question. Count the resolution of the scans. You've answered that one.
Yeah. But it's literally
Yeah.
you sign into it. So if you want to read a book, you can sign in and spend the rest of the afternoon reading it, or you can sign in and read it in 5 minutes flat and skip through. So there's no time restraint on it. So it's literally not like going into the library and getting a book. It's the absolute opposite of that. You can take your time. So you could sign in and read millions of books, or just sign in and choose one. So there's no restriction as far as that goes. So you've got access, once you become a member, you've got access to this enormous collection that will be growing over the years.
Any other questions? We can finish early if nobody's got anything else to say, but
is there a search function that you can use somewhere in the system?
sorry, what is that?
Is there a search function that can be used?
Oh, that's a good point, actually, Philip. It's searching through. You didn't show us that. Would you like to load up again and have a look at that? Because there is a way of searching, isn't there, for certain
You can search
words.
in the book itself. Can you search for the books, Philip?
Okay, I need to share my screen again.
Well, we'll
Let me
let
just
Philip load and we'll explore this. I think
get
this is a
into
really
that.
good idea.
Okay, sharing, right.
Here we go. So
Now
open a book that you think we could, it's not too old. I mean,
Okay,
even
first
mundane
of all,
astrology, if you like.
This is the
Which
AA
is
bookcase. There are two parameters potentially for search. One is you might want to search for a particular author or title. As far as I
okay.
know,
Do that first. Do that
okay,
first.
as far as I know, there's no way to search the whole system for an author or title, but because the different bookcases are themed around different time periods, with the exception of the AA bookcase, which covers.
You see that search button in the top left-hand side there?
Yeah.
Type Harvey in it and see what happens.
Okay, well, if I do that from within one of the bookcases, that should be able to
Yeah, well,
locate.
that's a step in the right direction. There you go. You get that.
That works fine.
Yeah, take that out then.
What I mean is, if I was trying to search from outside the bookcases for a particular author, I don't think that would be possible. But there are only two logical places where you could look for most things, they would either be in one of the themed bookcases derived from my earlier scans, which are all very logically themed by time period or subject matter, or they would be in the AA bookcase. So
yeah, okay,
you
take
just need
Harvey
to,
out, Philip,
let's take
and
that out. If we go to, inside one of the books,
yeah,
I
open a book,
don't
looking.
know if there's going to be any way to
See
actually
what-
search the interior
I've
of
got a feeling there might be.
I think it's
copies.
bottom left in the little
Oh, right.
circle. Yeah.
Search,
Yeah.
You can write it in there and then
Now
stick it in the box
type
top left.
so
something that you might want to know
let's
about
look
this woman.
for. Okay, let's just take Aquarius and see if that finds.
Yeah,
Yes,
there you
that
go.
has,
Takes
that
all the
has search.
pages. Yeah.
So what that will be doing is using the OCR layer, optical character recognition layer, that was automatically generated at the time these were first generated into PDFs, and I did instruct the conversion system to retain that data, so it has come in useful. The only thing to mention about the OCR layer is when scanning into Adobe Acrobat, it is error prone on old books. So there will be some instances where, particularly on very old books, such as those from the 17th and 19th centuries, that the OCR has trouble reading them and misses a lot of...
Just click on one of those boxes properly so it jumps to that. Does it jump to the page? Yeah, it does.
Jumps to the page and it highlights it in yellow because Philip just demonstrated that. Look, there's your word Aquarius.
Exactly what you need, isn't it?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Another one. So that does actually work. That's a very good question. Thank you for asking that.
Yeah, good question.
Mm.
John said, that's great. Wasn't expecting such a full search. That's Flipbook and all the work that Philip has done in scanning these correctly. So,
yeah, I'm not sure what's going to happen if you get one of the very early ones with writing script and that. I don't know. What have we load one of them just for the sheer interest?
I mean,
of
you
it.
do get some hits, but it will miss some, and so there's no real substitute.
Just check out what it does.
Okay, let's go out to this one and back into.
Give it a challenge.
Right, back into the From Lily to Partridge.
Oh, you're going for a really good one here.
Yeah, so let's go to Butler's Haggai Astrologia, or I don't even know how to pronounce that word. It's a very strange word, but let's go to it. Or Astrology, a Sacred Science from 16.
Okay, now just click the question mark down the bottom left and see what you can search for.
Button. Okay, so let's go to
something fairly
Reverend.
easy.
Okay.
There you go. Mm.
It has managed to find quite a few examples.
Just click one page, wait for the loading.
Yeah.
There it is.
But if you look on the search result, alongside Reverend here, it's written D-O open bracket F open bracket close bracket R. So it completely failed to read Doctor, which is in an old italic. And that's just an example of how the OCR doesn't really cope with old fonts. Reverend, it didn't have a problem with, probably because it's in a fairly standard script, but the italic Doctor next to it, it couldn't read properly.
Yeah. I mean, this is standard issue problem for all OCR stuff, isn't it? So, but like it does make an effort, which is could be very helpful. Well, at least it takes you to the area you need to study in more depth and things like that. I mean, is there a word on this page that's in italics that you could put in the search button just to see if it comes to that?
Well, for instance, we've got second proposition, we've got the old long S.
Old S, yeah.
I don't think it will find that at all, but I can look it up and see. Proposition. Yeah, it hasn't found proposition. It couldn't read that. I'll try thesis, which also appears in italic there. It may find other examples that aren't. No, it hasn't found thesis either, so. But we can only make do with what we've got in terms of the strength of the search engine. It's better than nothing.
Wendy, I just noticed you mentioned, or you said you had Kat with you at the moment. I mean, I if we've answered everything, that we don't need to bother her. But if there's anything we need to add to what you were asked, what people are asking, let me know.
Yeah, I mean, I've got Kat here with me, and she's advised that, I mean, you're talking about the multiple copies taken out, or are you talking about the research functionality?
Yeah, well, it's just if there's anything that you feel that we haven't discovered the answer to without her help, I just thought I'd mention that as a possibility. But you know, if we've done it all, then we don't need to get her involved. Just watch us.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, I think, yeah, unless you've got any questions for her, really, because she's here with me. So if you have any questions on, I mean, the thing with the online library, the access is available to all at all times. That's the whole point of it. So even if 100 people wanted the same book, then they have access to that. So that's not a problem.
Great. So that's the main question I know you were answering. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that was it. And the search functionality, yeah, it's just the sort of same for any Adobe PDF or any, yeah, you can search for anything within a PDF, so as you would in a Word document or an Excel spreadsheet. So it's the same. It's not like the PDFs for the old journals that are archived, which you can't search for, but these ones, they're yeah. So if you want to search for the word Venus, it'll pick it up throughout the PDF. So I think that's all. Cool.
Yeah, Georgia has asked another question. She said, I wonder if you put the spelling in that the text says it, like if you did an F instead of the S, would it pick it up? We don't know. We'd have to try that out. But
yeah, sorry, it's worth a try. I'm not that confident that it would work consistently. As you saw the example with Doctor, it mistook some of the parts of the italic script as open and closed brackets, which they're not. So it got terribly confused with that. So I think you'd have to do a combination on the older books of some search and then just literally scanning through as you would if you had the book in your hand or a reprint of it.
John, do you want to unmute yourself?
Yeah, I was just wondering when it goes live because I can't wait to get my hands on it.
Yeah, it's going to be a subscription in addition to membership. It won't just be free to members, I'm afraid, because we want to sustain the income so that we can grow the library as quickly as possible. And that might involve employing more scanners if we can get the rights to do things. So there will be a subscription which will be dramatically reduced for AA members. And more expensive for online members, and that will be announced when it's been formally agreed by the board. But we are aiming to have it ready, all that done, and more books there sometime in November. I think that's what the subgroup was thinking was reasonable, and we can certainly get a few more books up there by then. But that's the best I can tell you. Is that okay?
That's great. Yeah.
Thanks for your question, John, and thanks for your interest as well. Just to add to what Roy said there about additional books, the aim is that certainly by the end of this year, I will scan and crop and convert another 30 out of copyright sources from the AA library. And there is going to be a certain point where there are no longer that many sources in the AA library that haven't already been scanned with the equivalent copies from my library, and therefore we get to a point where we have to consider what we're going to scan next. But certainly we should be able to bring the AA bookcase up by another 30 volumes by the end of this year.
And we'll be discussing this, I think, at the next subgroup meeting, but it's very likely that we will consider more books from Philip's library and also actively try to see how many in copyright books we can get permission to load in from other authors, just like we have with Mundane Astrology. So, you know, it's going to grow. I'm hoping to get to the point where we've got more books to scan than Philip can actually do, but we'll see if that works out or not. Anything else?
The reason that we've asked you to come here is because this is a soft launch, is to get a bit of your feedback as well. And is there anything in particular that you think we should be doing that would make the library more exciting for you if it isn't exciting enough as it is already? Because this is why we've invited you here today, so that we can run this past you. What are your thoughts? Is there anything that we should be knowing for the future while we're developing it? So if you can either stick in the chat or just give us a shout and we'll unmute you.
Mm.
Everybody's dazed.
Well, I don't think the silence is a negative silence. I feel that, you know, and also we are recording this, so this conversation is going to be widely heard. First of all, by the many people who said they wanted to come but couldn't quite make it. You know, this is only the beginning. It's just a taster to see how you reacted. So, as Viv says, looks amazing. Can't wait to access all that history. And it's not only about history, Viv, either. It's going to be about as much as we can pack in from all sorts. And although this has been the focus is on the older books because of their out of copyright, and amazing that I didn't know anything about most of the books that Philip's shown us. I'm very ignorant in that regard. So it's amazing to have this, but we will also have more up-to-date stuff if we can. So it's going to be for everybody. Any other points before we...
Reese, if you've got a question there.
Yeah.
Can you turn your microphone on? I can't hear you.
Am I?
Yes, I
on
can
now?
hear you now. Yeah, go ahead,
Yeah,
please.
Just to kind of back up what Roy was saying, there are many 20th century books that are out of print that I can't get a hold of. And I'm hoping that the copyright issues involved will, some arrangement will be able to be made so that we can have access to them also. Is there an address that we can write to for particular volumes that we're interested in?
Yeah, I think I'm glad you said that. As soon as you were talking, I was thinking, hey, we should start listing these books, and there are a lot of them I know. And Philip, would you want to take that on, or do you like someone else in the subgroup to take it on? What do you feel about that? You know, receiving a list of recommended books that are in copyright but unavailable generally, like Mundane Astrology was, so that we could probably investigate the possibility of getting permission to load them in.
Yeah, that's a very good question, Rhys. And I think it depends quite a bit on the age of the book, whether it is still in print or not, as to whether there's a realistic possibility even. Conventionally, it was said that when a book was out of print permanently, although it wasn't out of copyright, it was known as an orphan work, and the status in terms of copyright is still copyrighted, but there's more potential freedom for reprinting if there's no publisher or author alive still who has an active interest. So I think with books whose authors are alive, we would obviously need to go directly to the author and to their most recent publisher with any permission request. And I think in the majority of cases that would not be granted, but if the author requested it and as it was agreeable to it themselves, it might be. But there are also, as you say, there are a lot of out-of-print books whose authors are deceased, but which are officially still in copyright and will be for decades to come. And that would be the area where it might be worth further investigation.
Yeah.
The problem is copyright searching, if you do it the formal way through a lawyer, is very, very expensive. And as we are a small budget charity, we don't have the budget to employ a lawyer to do searches like that. So just what's possible, I think that's something we're going to have to discuss.
Yeah.
But certainly if you want to send a list of books that would be of interest to you, then we can look, I can help the subcommittee look into logistics that would be involved with those based on what I know
I was
about
asking
publication
Philip,
history.
yeah, you're right. Absolutely, what you said is a very good explanation of the problem. I was just, if you're happy to receive emails, which you wouldn't necessarily only be dealing with. I mean, the subgroup could deal with it, and maybe even other people could take it on, particularly if it's an area of knowledge that they're particularly interested in. But if we could gradually build up a list of books that people would really like to have access to that they just can't buy, or something like that, you know, then your email address is generally available. Should we put that, could you put that up on the, if you don't mind, could you put that up on the chat box so
Okay,
people
how do I
could...
open the chat
We
box?
do have library@astrologicalassociation.com, which gets forwarded.
That would be
Thank you,
fine. Yeah,
Chris.
just use that one. That would be
Very good
absolutely fine.
idea.
Yeah, no, I'm certainly happy to take those emails. Sorry, I was trying to respond more to the original question we had, Roy, just to elucidate the issues involved.
And then tell us who, if you've got, you know, you don't have to do all the work. This is the point I'm making.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, it's library@astrologicalassociation.com.
I've just
Okay.
put that in the chat.
Thank you, Chris.
And there is a page on the website with a link to Philip's own site and to the AA library, and giving all the background as well. So
Yeah,
have a look on the website, on the AA website as well.
yeah, you just go to resources, the International Astrology Library, and that's where Chris is referring to. Anything else?
Can I say one thing? This is Georgia, and then it'll be brief. Our catalog is cataloging other collections in addition to Philip's vast collection. And it's locating these books that are more contemporary where the collections are. It's not about selling the books, but where they can be found, including some of which are more modern books, some of which are in internet archives that can be borrowed for about an hour. So I just wanted to add that as an adjunct.
Yeah. Do you want to put up the contact to your facility, your Georgia? Do you want to put that in the chat box so people can access it? Great, thank you. Maybe it's the beginning of a vast acting online of knowledge.
Just to add to what Georgia was saying a moment ago, that does also bring us back to the reality that there is still the physical library here. So if we can't get permission to include in the digital archive any of the out of copyright 20th century books, then it's always possible to arrange an appointment to actually come and research here for a day with a bit of notice, and I'll be happy to welcome visitors for that purpose. So it just becomes a conventional library, except one that's only open by appointment.
Yeah, thank you. Also, I just wanted to mention that another part of the development of the library is going to be Philip is going to give bi-monthly sessions, which will be well, the first one will probably be the launch of the library to the world at large, and that hopefully will be in November. After that, it will be selected areas. It may be connected with the library. It may be that these are books that have recently been scanned, and Philip may actually choose a particular group of books or subject area that he feels is particularly interested in, and give a background information to it in much more depth than he has gone in rushing through the whole range today. So that's an ongoing situation where people can be involved with the library online in a more profound way, as well as accessing the books themselves and studying them at their leisure.
Chris, did you see that message John's put in the chat? In the website, it gives the email address as librarian@astrologicalassociation.com. Does library and librarian both work?
That's a very good question. I thought it was library. Ooh, I better check that. I don't know. I'll have a look now.
I just copied it from the website, so that's what it says.
Well, librarians should get through if it's there.
Yeah, I'm just going to check that it is actually that email address actually exists. I don't want to be giving out an incorrect email address, so apologies for that. But carry on. I've got to load it up and check. And
okay, you're going to tell us in a moment.
On to the host to see what email addresses we've got.
Yeah.
By the way, if either of those is used, it will be forwarded to one of my inboxes, and I won't reply from an @astrologicalassociation.com email, because I don't have access to actually send emails from it, so I'll just send from one of my private email addresses. But
Yeah,
with the
that's
thread
fine,
shown,
Philip.
so
That's fine. But you, yeah, as long as you shouldn't bounce, it should be all right. If it's just a personal email. Right. Anything else? There you go. There's another question. Any plans to upload ancient Sumerian text or Arabic text? There is an Arabic there, isn't there? I think I saw one in Arabic, wasn't there, when I was there?
okay, that's a good question. We have to bear in mind here that most of the modern scholarship on astrology that includes the original source text is still in copyright. So we would have to only upload academic volumes and similar that are now out of copyright, and there's a very limited supply of those because the study of the history of astrology in academia is so modern in itself. It's just possible that the 1934 first edition of Al-Biruni's Book of Instruction in the Elements of the Art of Astrology, which I have in my collection with the Arabic source text and facing English translation, might be legitimate now. I don't know on that one. We might have to inquire. I think it was probably published by Oxford University Press in 1934. I know there have been a lot of partial reprints of the English portion of the astrological portion, the English translation. Another example, you mentioned Sumerian. I do have a complete set of Charles Birolleau's Astrologie Chaldéenne in 3 bound volumes, which includes the text and the transcription of large parts of the Enuma Anu Enlil, and that was published, I think, in from around 1909 to 1914, and therefore that will certainly be out of copyright. So that might be one that would be worth working on. But again, copyright is the ultimate restriction.
We could put that one on the list, I'd have thought, to do it fairly soon if it's out of copyright, because it'd be a very interesting source. Yeah.
I've just checked, and library and librarian both work, and they both go to Philip's email address, so you can use either.
There you go. Anything else? Okay. Oh, what are we? Expensive book. Annette says expensive books from Brill. That is normally only for academic libraries. Would it be possible to include them in this library?
No, absolutely not. They cost €300 each, and if you're doing the MA at the University of Wales, Trinity St David, you get access to them, and you can download it as a PDF that you can keep. But obviously, we can't put that PDF anywhere and share it. So our students getting an absolute bargain because they're getting thousands of pounds worth of books for nothing. But we certainly can't share that to the AA library, unfortunately. They are absolutely outrageous what Brill charges.
Yeah, user, I don't know what your name is, user, I'm afraid, but you've asked, you were interested in the Enuma Anu Enlil.
Yeah, that was in acknowledgement of the response I gave to users' question
Right,
above about
okay.
Sumerian text. So that's good that I was able to provide something of interest that you might be interested in seeing scanned. So that's great.
Okay. Anything else? No, carry. Please.
So do we have any more questions, or should we wind this up now, Roy? What do you think?
Yeah, I'm just thinking. Yeah, Karen just came to see me. I'm not quite sure why. I think she's got my
You
dinner
made
ready.
your dinner and you didn't even have your dinner.
Okay, I'm going to just say a brief bit, but I don't want anybody else on the subcommittee to say what they want to say if they're ready to say anything. But basically, I'm just so grateful that so much interest has been shown, and so I've learned what an incredible resource we have, and we must all do all we can to make it as available as possible, as widely as possible, and we will do that. Does anybody want to say anything else before we close it?
Well, if it hasn't been mentioned, I just want to say, although this launch, I mean, thank you all very much for coming along, is free. We said you're welcome to make donations, and we did have 2 extremely generous donations from 2 people who I've thanked personally. I'm not going to name them in case they wish to remain anonymous, but any donations that people do want to make really will help expand the library in the future as well. So I just wanted to mention that and to thank the 2 people who know who they are, who made some very generous donations.
Yeah, there's a lovely message of thanks from Georgia. Thank you, Georgia, and from John too, John Green. Okay, Amanda, Mary, do you want to say anything more?
I don't think I've got anything more to add now. I'm just pleased that so many people are interested in what we and Philip are doing. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Bye, and we will be back again in stronger force soon. Keep over this, and don't forget the recording is available. And if you feel there's anybody who should listen to this recording, just let us know, and Chris will send out a link that will be give you immediate access to everything that's been discussed and shown today. So it's not over. It's up to us now to spread the word and get more and more people interested as we build up the anticipation for the full launch of the new online library, International Astrology Library. Thank you.
Absolutely. I'll stop the recording now then, and I'll send the link out to everybody shortly.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all very much, and lovely to
Bye-bye.
see everybody. Thank you.
And Chris, do send it